What if the reason you enjoy being alone has nothing to do with being cold, distant, or antisocial? What if it started much earlier than you think? Maybe before you had the words to explain what you felt. Before you understood why certain people drained you. Before you realized that silence felt safer than conversation. Because for some people, solitude is not just a preference. It is a place of safety. It is where the nervous system finally relaxes. Where there are no expectations to manage. No emotional tension to decode. No fear of being misunderstood, rejected, ignored, or disappointed again. And a strange thing is, many people who prefer being alone are not people who hate connection. In fact, many of them feel deeply. They notice everything. They care more than they admit. They remember details others forget. They sense shifts in tone, mood, and energy almost instantly. But somewhere along the way, they learned that being around people could also mean being overwhelmed, unseen, or emotionally unsafe. So they adapted. They became independent, quiet, selective, self-contained, and from the outside, people may call them distant. But from the inside, it feels more like protection. So today, let's talk about the hidden childhood patterns that often shape people who grow up preferring to be alone. Not to blame the past, not to diagnose anyone, but to understand something important. Sometimes, the person who seems like they doesn't need anyone is the person who once needed someone the most. First, unpredictable love can make closeness feel unsafe. Imagine being a child and never knowing which version of someone you were going to get. One day, they're kind. The next day, they are cold. One moment, they are present. The next, they are emotionally unavailable. Sometimes they listen. Sometimes they dismiss you. Sometimes they comfort you. Sometimes they make you feel like your feelings are too much. And when this happens often enough, a child's mind begins to learn a painful lesson. Connection is unpredictable. Love is not always safe. Closeness can change suddenly. So instead of relaxing into relationships, you start scanning them. You watch people's faces. You listen carefully to their tone. You notice small changes in mood. And even when nothing is wrong, part of you is waiting for something to shift. This is one reason some people grow up feeling calmer alone. Because when you are alone, there is no emotional guessing game. No sudden silence to interpret. No change in attitude to fear. No need to ask yourself, did I do something wrong? Alone feels stable. People can be warm one day and distant the next. But solitude does not suddenly abandon you. And when your early experiences taught you that connection could become painful without warning, your mind may choose distance before anyone has the chance to hurt you. Not because you do not want love, but because part of you learned that love can feel dangerous when it is inconsistent. Second, being ignored emotionally can teach you to stop reaching out. There is a type of childhood pain that does not always look dramatic from the outside. No one may see it. No one may talk about it. But it slowly teaches a child to become silent. It happens when your emotions are constantly minimized. You are sad, and someone says, stop being dramatic. You are scared, and someone says, there is nothing to be afraid of. You are angry, and someone says, you are overreacting. You try to explain what hurts, but nobody truly listens. So eventually, you stop explaining. Not all at once. Slowly. You stop telling people when something bothers you. You stop expecting comfort. You stop asking for emotional support. And somewhere deep inside, you begin to believe, my feelings are mine to handle alone. As an adult, this can look like strength. You do not complain much. You do not ask for help easily. You handle your pain privately. You disappear when life gets heavy. People might think you are calm, but sometimes you're not calm. You're just used to being alone with your emotions. And this is why solitude can become familiar. Because when no one was there to hold your emotional world, you learned to hold it yourself. You became your own comfort, your own listener, your own safe place. But here is the hidden cost. When you learn too early that your feelings will not be received, you may also struggle to believe that anyone truly wants to understand you now. So even when someone is willing to care, you may still pull back. Not because they did something wrong, but because your nervous system remembers a time when opening up led to disappointment. Third, some people were forced to become independent too early. There's a difference between choosing independence and being forced into it. Some children grow up with the freedom to be children. They can cry. They can ask for help. They can make mistakes. They can depend on someone. But others learn very early that needing help is not safe. Maybe the adults around them were too busy. Maybe they were emotionally absent. Maybe the home was stressful. Maybe the child had to become responsible before they were ready. So they learn to figure things out alone. They learn to calm themselves down. They learn to hide their needs. They learn to solve problems quietly. And over time, this creates a very specific kind of person. Someone capable, responsible, observant, strong, but also someone who feels uncomfortable depending on others. Because depending on others once felt risky. Needing something once felt like becoming a burden. Asking for support once felt like setting yourself up to be ignored. So now, being alone does not always feel lonely. It feels controlled. It feels predictable. It feels like no one can disappoint you if you're not expecting anything from them. And this is one of the most misunderstood parts of people who prefer solitude. They're not always avoiding life. Sometimes, they're avoiding the feeling of needing someone who may not show up. And if you have lived this way for years, self-reliance can become your identity. You may even feel proud of it, and you should be proud of your strength. But you should also ask yourself, did I become independent because I was free, or because I had no other choice? Because there's a big difference between healthy independence and emotional survival. Fourth, a stressful childhood can make the world feel too loud. Some people do not prefer being alone because they dislike people. They prefer being alone because being around people feels like too much input, too many voices, too many moods, too many expectations, too many invisible social rules. And if you grew up in an environment filled with tension, arguments, pressure, criticism, or unpredictability, your nervous system may have learned to stay alert. You may have become highly sensitive to the emotional atmosphere around you. You walk into a room and immediately feel if something is off. You notice when someone's tone changes. You sense when someone is annoyed. You feel tension before anyone says anything. This can be exhausting because you're not just socializing. You're processing everything. You're reading the room, managing your reactions, predicting what might happen next. So when you finally get time alone, it feels like your mind can breathe again. No performance, no pressure, no emotional noise, just quiet. And for someone whose nervous system has spent years on alert, quiet can feel like medicine. This is why some people need solitude after social interaction, even if they enjoyed the interaction. They may love their friends. They may care about people. They may even be warm and funny when they're comfortable. But after a while, they feel drained. Not because they are rude, not because they're selfish, but because their inner system is working harder than most people realize. For them, being alone is not rejection. It is recovery. Fifth, highly sensitive people often need solitude to process life. Some people feel life more intensely. They do not just hear words. They feel the meaning underneath them. They do not just notice conflict. They absorb the emotional weight of it. They do not just remember what happened. They replay how it felt. And when a child is highly sensitive but grows up in an environment where sensitivity is not understood, they may begin to see their own depth as a problem. Maybe they were told they were too emotional, too quiet, too dramatic, too sensitive, too easily affected. So they learn to hide the intensity of what they felt. But hiding emotions does not make them disappear. It only pushes them inward. And that inner world can become very full of thoughts, questions, memories, feelings, connections, meanings. So solitude becomes the place where everything can settle. A highly sensitive person may need time alone not because they are empty, but because they are full of things they noticed, full of emotions they never expressed, full of energy they absorbed from other people. And without enough space, life can start to feel overwhelming. This is why solitude can feel peaceful to them. It gives them room to return to themselves, to separate their emotions from other people's emotions, to think clearly, to breathe, to feel human again. And if this is you, there is nothing wrong with needing that space. The problem is not solitude. The problem is when solitude becomes the only place where you feel safe enough to exist. Sixth, being alone is not the same as being lonely. This is where many people misunderstand solitude. Being alone and being lonely are not the same thing. Loneliness is the pain of wanting connection and feeling its absence. But solitude can be different. Solitude can be intentional. It can be peaceful. It can be chosen. It can be the place where you recharge, create, reflect, and reconnect with yourself. Many people who prefer being alone are still capable of deep love. They can care deeply. They can be loyal. They can build meaningful relationships. But they are selective. They do not give access to everyone. They do not open up quickly. They do not confuse constant communication with real connection. And often, this selectiveness comes from experience. They have learned that not everyone deserves their emotional energy. Not everyone knows how to listen. Not everyone is safe with vulnerability. So they choose carefully. And in a world that often pressures people to be constantly available, constantly social, constantly reachable, choosing solitude can actually be an act of self-respect. But there is still an important question to ask. Am I alone because I genuinely feel at peace? Or am I alone because connection feels threatening? Because those two things can look the same from the outside. But inside, they feel very different. Choice feels calm. Protection feels tense. Choice feels open. Fear feels automatic. Choice says, I enjoy my own company. Fear says, I do not know how to let anyone close. And healing begins when you can tell the difference. Because maybe the goal is not to stop being alone. Maybe the goal is to stop hiding inside solitude. Maybe the goal is to keep your peace without building walls so high that no one can reach you. When you look at all of this together, the story changes. Maybe you were not born distant. Maybe you became careful. Maybe you were not born emotionally unavailable. Maybe you learned that being vulnerable was unsafe. Maybe you were not born wanting to do everything alone. Maybe you were taught, again and again, that depending on others would only lead to pain. And if that is true, then your solitude makes sense. It was not random. It was not weakness. It was adaptation. Your mind found a way to protect you. It created distance where closeness felt unpredictable. It created silence where expression was ignored. It created independence where support was missing. It created solitude where the world felt too overwhelming. And for a while, that may have helped you survive. But what protects you in childhood can sometimes limit you in adulthood. Because the same walls that kept pain out can also keep love out. The same independence that made you strong can make it hard to receive help. The same emotional control that kept you safe can make it hard to be truly known. So the question is not, why do I like being alone? The deeper question is, do I still have a choice? Can you choose solitude when it nourishes you and still allow connection when it is healthy? Can you enjoy your own company without disappearing from people who truly care? Can you protect your peace without assuming everyone will hurt you? Because you deserve both. You deserve solitude that restores you and connection that does not drain you. You deserve people who do not make you feel like a burden. You deserve relationships where you do not have to perform, shrink, hide, or constantly explain your sensitivity. You deserve to be understood without begging to be understood. And maybe the most powerful realization is this. There was never anything wrong with you for needing space. You are not broken. You are not strange. You are not too much. You were someone who learned to survive emotionally in the way that made the most sense at the time. But now, you're allowed to choose differently. You can still love silence. You can still protect your energy. You can still enjoy being alone. But you can also learn that safe connection exists. Slowly, carefully, with the right people, at your own pace. Because healing does not mean becoming someone else. It means finally understanding why you became who you are, and then deciding which parts of that story you still want to carry. So if you're someone who prefers being alone, maybe the real question is not whether that is good or bad. Maybe the real question is, does your solitude feel like freedom, or does it feel like a place you learn to hide? And once you can answer that honestly, you begin to take back something very important. Not just your peace, your choice. If this video helped you understand yourself or someone close to you, Leave a like and subscribe for more deep psychology and human behavior content. And before you go, ask yourself this. Do you choose being alone because it brings you peace, or because people once made connection feel unsafe?